I've got another brass project here. This comes from the Kokosing Valley Model Railroad. It's a brass Challenger made by Katsumi for Westside. So this is apparently in mostly running condition, but seems to have a problem with a short circuit that prevents it from actually working properly. So they sent it over to me to see if I could get it fixed and working. So let's see what I can do with it. I'm going to start out just by reconnecting the front engine to the rest of it here so that I can get a better handle on exactly what's going on. So that's just held on by the one screw, and then at the other end there's just this sort of shelf and a couple pipes that hold it in place, so that's all that's keeping that there. The boiler front also isn't held secure right now, so I think I'll just have to fix that solder joint. That'll come later and that'll be easy enough, I think. So to start out, I've just got this piece of track here with my terminals hooked up. I'm gonna put the engine alone on here. See what happens. I know it won't run, of course, but I want to do this just to see if the short is for sure in the engine or possibly in the tender. Yep, that's a direct short circuit. As for the tender, might as well give that a quick check. The truck fell off, there's a screw inside of it. We'll get that reattached later. No short in the tender, so I don't think there's much left to do with that besides reconnecting that truck. I was told that when the chassis is not connected to the boiler, that the short circuit disappears. So I'm just going to start out by seeing what happens when it's only the rear engine alone. So rear engine and rear truck. Push down on that to keep it on the track. No short circuit. Okay. So the engine itself is probably fine. Let's see what happens with just the front chassis here. Also no short circuit. I wonder if maybe this is just a case of the wheels being flipped around where they're not supposed to be. So it looks like these are the grounded wheels on this side. Well, easy way to find out. Hook up a terminal there. Get a bit of voltage. Okay. All right, so these three wheels are grounded to the frame. None of the rear truck wheels pick up any electricity. They're all insulated. So this is grounded to the right rail. This one should also be. No? Well, I think I found the problem. This wheel here is on the wrong side. And the front truck wheels are all good. So, looks like this is a simple fix. So at some point, this must have been taken apart, maybe to do some maintenance, and the middle drivers were taken off, but when they were reassembled, they were flipped around. So while the rest of the engine picks up from the right rail, this one wheel is on the left. That's good. That means this will be an easy fix. Looking closer, I do see that there's one screw that was replaced at some point, so this has definitely been disassembled before. Main plate here is held on by two screws. That one's not really coming up though. Is that going into a nut maybe? I don't see any nut inside of there. Wonder if maybe an incorrect screw was put in there at some point. I can't get that out with the screwdriver, so this isn't exactly the best method, but there it goes. Oh, yep, that is a wrong screw. It's only threaded at the end, so this is supposed to go somewhere else. Not sure where, or if it even was originally from this engine. All right, so there's the inside of it. Huh. It looks like these drive wheels are all sprung too. Very nice. You know what, I should take this gear cover off first. Right, so now it's just a matter of taking out these two screws and flipping the axle around. It looks like one of the springs popped out. There's a pin in the chassis where that's held in place. These square bearings can be kind of finicky sometimes. So you just have to grab them with pliers or tweezers, turn them gently until they finally fit into that axle slot. There. And of course the other one flipped around. Come on. Okay, there it goes. Put this plate back on. Line up the chassis spring there. Now this screw was correct. I might have to check my extra screws and see if I have another one that'll work better than that first one I took out. I found a screw in my bin that was just the perfect size to fit there. So that's holding it nicely in place. So now I'll just put the screws back in there and get this reassembled. And I also oiled the axles real quick while I was at it. Might as well give it a tune-up while it's here. Just gently move these rods over. Get them lined up. Screw is magnetic, so that makes it easy to grab and not put on. Let's try that again. Just move that wheel back and forth a little while I'm tightening it to make sure all the rods are going in exactly the way they're supposed to. That feels a little tight though. I might have to check and see what's up there. All right, so I got the screws in place, but I found out the reason this one was tight on the rods is actually because that's the wrong screw for that spot. It's supposed to be slightly longer. So I'll have to try and figure out where that one went, but while I was working on this, I also noticed that the eccentric here was actually unsoldered from the pin. So I'm gonna see if I can fix that real quick. I just got myself this fresh bottle of soldering flux. So I'm gonna put just a tiny droplet in there, not much, just a little bit. And I'll push that down onto the pin, line that up. got my soldering iron here. Put just a touch onto the tip to help with heating. Now, see if that'll reflow. Oh yeah, that's a tight connection now. And it still moves freely. Well, I couldn't find that slightly longer screw, so I kind of have to wonder if that was ever in there from the beginning. So what I did instead was not exactly my most recommended method, but kind of an emergency one. I took the rod here and used this drill bit that's just slightly larger than the diameter of the screw head, and made the hole just the tiniest bit deeper. Not enough to cause any problems. It's only a tiny bit, and it seems to have done the job. The screw is in there tightly now, but it can still roll smoothly. So with that out of the way, now I'll just finish on giving this thing a tune-up. So I'll give it some oil, fresh grease, quick test, and I think this will be ready to go. I already did the axles earlier, so all I need to do on this one is the side rods. While I'm doing the tune-up, I'll completely remove the rear chassis here too, just to make sure I can get to everything needed. It looks like this is held on by 2 screws at the front and 2 at the back. Well, it's not quite wanting to come out. Might have to check the threading on that screw to make sure there's no damage. It doesn't seem to be magnetic either. Come on, come on. Oh, there it goes. And there it is. Looks like that's another screw of the incorrect size for the hole. Get that apart. That motor's got a pretty big armature on it. That should have a lot of torque. Let's see, hook up the terminals real quick. I'll connect this one to a screw underneath. This one to the drawbar. That runs nice and smooth. Pretty quiet for an open frame motor. Just carefully dropping a touch of oil to each of those bearings. Same for the motor. Something else I've noticed is that some of these rods are kind of bent out of shape. Let's see if I can straighten those out a bit. Just carefully trying to straighten out each spot using my smooth jawed pliers here. Main rod here is also just a little bit warped. That one I'll just kind of pry out while holding the other end. That should be straight enough. The other rod here. Sometimes it's difficult to pick up an engine like this, but when you are handling it, it is best to really try to be sure that you're not gripping around here when you're lifting it, because it's easy to bend these rods in. Especially with this one, because this is actually a really heavy engine when it's all assembled. Okay, that looks good. Now right here, I believe these are the universal parts that go onto the front engine. Well, of course, before I put those back on, I have to get this gearbox back in place. Okay, now I've got the gearbox back on there, And I also repaired a few of the details along the way. There were just a few broken solder joints here and there, so that was easy enough to do. So I have a washer on the end of that shaft there. And the original drive tubing is actually still flexible and in decent condition. I'm going to spread a drop of super glue inside of the tubing, just like that. And then press that on. Seems to be in a good position now, and it's holding in place. Super glue usually has a good bond to this kind of material, to metal. Helps a lot. And now there's this piece here which goes through that support bearing on the back. This is what turns the mechanism. That all seems to be working fine. It's lined up just fine. I actually did have to straighten this piece out earlier. It was a little bent. So now, same thing for the other end. Put a touch of super glue in there. Now I can push that into the drive tubing. And now that is fully assembled. And now, to get these back together, that shaft lines up just like that. This goes down here on the bottom. Gotta keep these from coming apart though. There, that short screw holds it together. So the shaft can come apart like that when the front drops down, but the boiler, once this is assembled, should prevent it from doing that, so I don't think it'll cause any problems. I'll make sure of that as I'm getting it reassembled. Anyway, let's just give this a quick test. See if the motor will turn all that. Seems to be working. Now that I know that works, last piece to reattach is the front of the boiler here. That's held on by just a single large solder joint underneath. Carefully rest that there. Plenty of solder on both ends. It looks like the joint just broke from handling. Might be able to fix that without any flux. Let's see. Just need heat. It's on there, but it still feels kind of loose since it's only one joint. I'll see if I can add any more solder in there to strengthen it. Alright, so the extra solder seems to have helped. Of course, there's still nothing at the top, but it feels a lot stronger now, so I don't think that'll be coming off anytime soon. If it does, well, just glue it. I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, anyway, with that, I think I can put this back together now. Actually, maybe I should just put the rear engine on first, and then the front engine. The universal should be easy enough to put together along the way. Let's just drop that back down in there. Now get the screws. I found that the screw holes have M2 threading, so that pack of screws that I bought for fixing the last brass steam engine, the 464, turned out to be a good fit for this. All I have to do is come to length like this one here. And this is actually the last one. I've already got the other two replacements in. So I'll just put this one here. Perfect fit. But now that is done, tighten these two. Now I can work on getting the front back on. All right, so that was kind of difficult getting the pipes all lined up and everything else together, but now the engine is assembled. So I'll just get the tender truck put back on and then give this thing a test run. Looks like the tender body is only held on by a couple screws, so that should make it easy to disassemble. But there it goes. Okay, that came right up. So there's the spring that was missing, and there's the screw. Better make sure this one's not coming loose either. Okay, that seems fine. So the spring goes onto that screw. Screw goes into the hole. Hold that in place with the screwdriver. There, that's up where it needs to be. Make sure the insulated wheels are on the correct side. There we go. That takes care of that. Now I can put the body back on. Now the other one. Okay. Notice this ladder was bent, so I'll straighten that out gently. All right, and I think that's it for the tender. So now let's give this thing a test run and see if it works. All right, there it is on the layout. And I gave it a quick push forward to make sure it would go around the 22-inch radius, which it looks like it will. So now let's power it up and see if it goes. Okay, so there's a short circuit in there somewhere still. I'll have to look and see where that is. But it is at least running on the straight track. A little noisy, but I think some of that might be because of just the way that the drive line is put together. Alright, so it looks like the short circuit on the 22-inch radius is actually from the drawbar there. So right now I have just a small amount of voltage going through and there's no short circuit, but when I do this, suddenly it jumps way up. So I think the drawbar is contacting somewhere underneath the engine right there. Yep, there's the problem. This piece, which limits the movement, somehow got twisted out of place. Let's see if I can just move that over a bit. That should do it. All right, let's try that again. There we go. A little noisy. I think that's the drive line causing it. So I might see if I can tune that a little bit more. But that is a really, really smooth runner. Yeah, there's probably just a little misalignment in some of the drive tubing or something, so usually I can get those problems worked out, so I'll give that a go and see if that helps. So I actually sent this piece of fresh drive tubing along with the engine here, which actually seems to have even more flexibility than what's in there now, so I think I'll go ahead and install this and see if it helps. Now, one thing when you're installing drive tubing, especially with close spacing like this, you really have to be careful about the alignment. You have to keep things nice and straight, or it can put a lot of stress onto the bearings, increase the current draw of the engine, and if one shaft is misaligned from the other, it can cause movement like this, which leads to more vibration and noise. So let's see if doing some alignment work in here can fix that. Also, while I was removing the boiler this time, I found out that the plate here with the pipes on it actually just has a couple screws holding it in place, so that should make it a lot easier to get this back together the next time. And here's what I was talking about with the drive tubing alignment. You can see there that because the two shafts aren't perfectly aligned with each other and the tubing is just kind of holding there, it's causing the gearbox to actually move around back and forth, and that leads to vibration and noise. So I'll just see if I can fix that, and I think that'll help a lot. So I have one new piece in there, and that's turning nice and straight from the look of it. I'll be able to test that fully once the motor's hooked up. But before I do that, you can just barely see there that the motor shaft and worm shaft are not perfectly aligned. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put just a little shim under the motor, maybe a thin piece of metal, like I've got some brass on hand, so I think I'll put that in there. That will raise the front of the motor just slightly and get it better aligned. And once I've got that perfect, I'll put the tubing in and see how that does. All right, now you can see the piece of brass in there just under the motor, and it looks like that is exactly what was needed. And now the fresh tubing is in, and just to finish that, I grabbed these ends here, just kind of gave it a couple twists back and forth to make sure that was all aligned right where it needs to be, so it feels like it's turning freely. Now, let's see if that worked. Oh yeah, I see no vibration at all in that gearbox. Feels nice and smooth. Running quietly. All the new tubing is installed, and I think this is as good as it's ever going to be. So one more source of noise is this metal coupling here between the front and back. I don't think there's really much that can be done about that aside from replacing that whole drive line. So that may always be kind of noisy, but as long as it runs well, that should be fine. After a little more observation on the workbench, I noticed that the front of the boiler actually wasn't being supported. It was always leaning down like that and leading to a misalignment of the universal there. So I pulled apart the front truck again and found out that the support spring here actually looks like it was cut short at some point to reduce the tension, and I couldn't stretch it out anymore. When I tried that, it just went right back down to where it was, so I replaced that spring with a new one, and I think that may have helped. Oh yeah. Still not perfect. You're going to get some noise going around curves especially, but that's a huge difference. That's a really big difference. After a little more fine-tuning of the spring tension, I think I've got this running as well as I can possibly get it. So it's time to send this thing back now, and to the owner of this model at the Katsumi Valley Model Railroad. I hope this runs well for you for a long time to come.